Hi there, it's Sandy, your sister and your friend. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today I wanted to respond to a couple of things. One was a comment by my friend Linda, who said that some people might think that they're to blame if they're going through severe emotional or physical pain, or if they're suffering trauma that's really beyond their control. And also, Yam Esotericist made a comment on one of my earlier videos about Eckhart Tolle's concept of the pain body. So I wanted to wrap these two things together in this video today. So it's very important for me to say up front, first of all, that no one is at fault for the pain that they're going through. No one is to blame, and nobody should carry the shame or guilt associated with being in physical or emotional pain. For instance, many of us have never been severely depressed, so we couldn't possibly know what it's like to be so depressed that to that degree. Because we've all felt down sometimes, we might think, well, why can't they just snap out of it? But that's not how deep depression works. We don't really know what it's like to have a life that's so drab that we would consider taking our own life. And if we look at something like addiction, many of us are on the addiction spectrum, and maybe we've overcome an addiction on our own in our own life. So we might judge others by saying, "Well, why can't they just deal with it themselves as well?" We really have difficulty understanding people whose brains give them a different experience of life. And as for trauma, all of us have experienced trauma to some degree as a child or as an adult. And emotions and thoughts may be planted deep inside of us. And oftentimes, old traumatic pain comes in our lives in waves. And we're not the pain, but we can identify with the pain if we don't realize that that's not who we really are. And whatever we identify with becomes our egoic sense of self. Now, once we start to become enlightened, we may realize that we have a lot of stored up negative emotions and thoughts that have been suppressed in our subconscious mind. And Eckhart Tolle calls this the pain body. It's like an entity, like a little gremlin that lives inside each of us. And this gremlin has stored up negative emotions from all of our past experiences with family and friends and school and jobs, and even from our broader identities in our society, in our nation, and our culture. And sometimes this little gremlin needs an energy fix. And when it does, it will surface, and then we'll start to feel emotions like anger and sadness, jealousy, regret. And before we know it, we'll actually start to have thoughts like, I'll tell her a thing or two because she can't talk to me like that. Or, I don't want to talk to her. I'm going to avoid her because all she wants to talk about is how great her marriage is. So the emotions that we feel start to feed the thoughts, and then the thoughts amplify the emotions, and the vicious cycle begins. And when we supply the pain body with negative emotional energy, it grows and we actually become addicted to it. And how do we know if we've become addicted? To the point of identification, we act out its thoughts and feelings. And it's always looking to stir up the same emotions in somebody else, so it will have us say something to trigger them. It's an unconscious cycle that we have unfortunately accepted as normal. And then following some crazy drama with a family or friends, we may feel the emotions subside, and we may even have trouble remembering what started the crazy whole thing. And it doesn't matter to the pain body. It needed a fix, and it set us up to get one. Now, some people who faced incredible hardships and disasters actually define themselves by those experiences and the pain that caused them. And some people with chronic illness really makes that illness a defining part of their identity. And in those cases, the pain body can solidify the ego so that a person believes that they are enclosed in that painful identity. And on the other hand, traumatic pain can be the crack in our ego that opens us up to becoming conscious finally. So here we are. Every person has a pain body because we've all suffered hardships, but there is something deep inside us that transcends our suffering. It is the formless essence of who we really are. Our reason for being on the earth is to go deep enough within so that we can encounter our true self. So let's not forget, though, I don't want to forget this, pain and trauma are not our fault, and they're not anybody else's fault either. We were not consciously aware that we were letting pain and trauma inside us, and neither was the person who triggered us. We were not trying to be deliberately destructive to ourselves or to other people. We simply were not conscious. And that's why awareness is a critical revelation for everyone. So even though none of us is to blame, I'm encouraging all of us to take responsibility for where we are today. That is the only way that we'll forgo the identities of our formed self as a victim or a bully. It's a matter of developing a new paradigm. So let me say again, we're not to blame, but once our eyes are open to our true self, then we can begin to take responsibility for how we react in destructive ways to triggering events in our life. So we're responsible even though we didn't consciously or deliberately invite these things in. We did it because we were programmed to do it by our own childhood experiences, which in turn were programmed by our parents' childhood experiences. It's nobody's fault. Everyone is doing their best, but we pass on these unconscious patterns. Just as we don't blame ourselves, we don't blame other people for having unconscious patterns either. We can't blame a blind man for walking into furniture, but we do try to make other people conscious of their unconsciousness so they can take responsibility for their reactions as well. These dynamics affect people's physiology. So if we want to impact our life in positive ways entirely, we've got to wake up. Now, awareness is the only means for reducing the pain body because it is the observer of our false identity. Our observation exposes this little gremlin that hides in the dark recesses of our subconscious to the light within us. By being the observer of our inner state, we're no longer controlled by our inner state. We're not at the mercy of our inner state. This freedom allows us to observe and even welcome the negativity on display in front of us from another person's pain body or when our own pain body is rising up to be fed. This happens in the present moment as we practice being aware and awake rather than complacently asleep. When we're unconsciously complacent and believe that emotional outbursts and negative thoughts are normal, we allow our pain body free reign in our mind and our bodies and our hearts. So what should we do differently? When we feel that first little twinge of negativity in our solar plexus or in our gut, we need to ask ourselves, am I aware? And if not, we need to bring awareness into our present moment. So if we take a few deep breaths deep into our abdomen and allow the tension and negativity to flow out with our breath. And then notice as awareness actually enters every cell of our body. We may still sense some anger and fear or anxiety, but we'll notice that we're not controlled by it anymore. As awareness, we have surrounded it. The energy that was trapped by the negative emotion gradually recedes. We may feel tightness in our chest, but we notice that our hands and our shoulders are relaxed and we feel fine. We know that the negative emotion is not being re-energized. The old pain may still come up, or it may be burned up entirely by our observation. In either way is fine. If the pain resurfaces, we know that we're the true self, our true self, and not the pain. And that's the beginning of freedom from our pain body. We may notice natural healing happening and other changes that are positive in our physiology because there's so much power in awareness. Now, that's the work for every human being. Every permanent change in our life comes from us doing the hard work on the inside. It's good to see which words or tone of voice or actions are triggering events for us. And if we get triggered, somebody on the outside pulls the trigger, but we carry the explosives on the inside. It doesn't serve us to focus our attention on the trigger when we can eliminate the ammunition that's inside each of us. Circumstances in our life come and go, but lasting change is always an inside job. Our work is not to get the world to conform to how we want things to be so that the driver in front of me drives exactly at the speed that I want her to, or the checkout clerk laughs at my stupid joke. No, it's recognizing the first little negative thought or bit of negative emotion rising up so we observe it. Every human being acts according to their level of consciousness. Conscious awareness can be taught to children so they don't store up negative emotions in their pain body. We can make it a game like, hey, when you started screaming yesterday in the store, what were you feeling? Can you draw it? What color would it be? If you were to give it a name, what would you call it? And this helps them expose the emotions behind their actions so they don't get stored up in their subconscious. Teaching awareness to those that we love or we care about can be done at any age. Now, on a personal note, I find that my ego has many tricks up its sleeve to keep me in bondage. It doesn't give up power very easily. I believe it is letting go of this false sense of personalized identity that Jesus Christ was referring to when he told us we have to be reborn. Rebirth implies that you have to die first. It's really a dying to ourselves in each present moment experience. Freedom is a continual exposure of negative feelings and thoughts to God's light that's within each of us. And through practicing awareness, I can see the old triggers as they are happening. I may even intentionally lean back to remind myself that I am not allowing those energies inside me. I might take a few deep breaths, and I might even need to whisper to myself, that old reaction that's rising up is not who I am. And as I practice, it leads me to have greater compassion for the one who's pulling the trigger. I still notice what's going on around me and on the outside, but I'm the one in control of my response. It's like playing a detective game, noticing things and recognizing them for what they are. We are the witness, the observer. We bring positive energy and conscious awareness to the world. We will come to the point where we're thankful for everything that has happened to us, even though we suffered through it at the time, because everything is an opportunity to let go of our egoic sense of self, to live from our true self. And that, my friend, is the goal. Thank you so much for listening. I just love being in God's family with you. Hit the like button and share and leave a comment below if you'd like to. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.